Welcome to the Missionaries Podcast. Stories from the mission field for everyone, for you to listen, learn, and enjoy. Your host for today is Martin.
And welcome everyone to this new podcast. The topic for today is going into the mission field with your children. Woof, that's a tough one. Okay, first of all, let me introduce our special guest for today. Brandy Kelly, married to Dennis, 5 children, living in Texas. She's a missionary, teacher, sailor, pilot. Oh man, that's a long list. And above all, and that's the most important, saved by grace through faith in Jesus Christ. Welcome, Brandy.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
It's an honor to have you, in all honesty. Well, why don't you introduce yourself? I can do it for you, but hey, that's not fun. So who are you?
All right.
Please tell me.
Okay, so yes, I'm Brandy Kelly, and I've been married to Dennis for 28 years. He was a chaplain in the Navy, served for almost 21 years. So our prior life to missionary life. And then we felt God's call to missions, and we actually do member care for missionaries, so pastoral care, and we've been serving in Mexico and Central America, a little more than half of each year since 2016, and then the other half we are back in the United States working with churches and missionaries that are on furlough.
Wow, that's quite impressive, to be honest.
Thanks.
Have you done any? Well, I bet you have. You done any mission thingies abroad, or is it U.S. only?
No. So we spend a lot of the time in Mexico, Central America. We've flown over to Europe a couple of times and met with missionaries through that. So we get around quite a bit. Our kids are excellent travelers at this point.
Yeah, that's one thing. I mean, well, God can call you as a missionary, but well, if you've got kids, well, they also have to go along, travel with you. Do they like it, or?
They do. There are times that they get a little overwhelmed, but so we started traveling with them when they were all little, even when Dennis was still in the Navy. With that, we moved every 2.5, 3 years. And so they kind of got used to that lifestyle. And then once we started traveling to Mexico and working with missionaries in Mexico, they've always done really well. But we've looked at it as it's a family calling. It's not just that Dennis and I are called to this. It's all of us as a family. And that each one of us has a role in that.
Yeah. Yeah, I found a Bible verse. Let me see. I've got it somewhere. Man, it's such a mess on my desk today. 1 Corinthians 12 through 20. Just as a body, though one has many parts. And it's the same as in a family. Everybody has their own gifts, their own... do we all serve... as it says, there are different kinds of gifts, but the same Spirit distributes them. There are different kinds of service, but the same Lord. There are different kinds of working, but in all of them and in everyone, it's the same God at work.
That's right. Yes.
And I guess it's bad news if God calls you and your husband into missionary life and not your kids at all. Well, that's yeah.
Right. Yeah. And we've always tried to do things if we're coming up on a big decision, or we have family meetings, and we've had family meetings since our kids were little, and we'll sit down and we'll talk through things. We discuss pros and cons. When we talked about leaving, we were stationed in California when Dennis retired from the Navy, and we were living on a sailboat at that point. And mostly because we couldn't afford housing in the area, and sailboat sounded fun. And so we just at the time had no idea how God had planned to use that. And so we headed south in the sailboat to Mexico in search of missionaries to help. And it's been, there's a long story of how God has guided us to different people, and it's it's been quite an adventure over the last 8 years. But the whole discussion was, is this something that we all feel that God is calling us to?
Yeah.
And, of course, our little kids at the time maybe didn't quite understand that. Our youngest two, I think, were 6. And, but just even having that discussion, and this is what we're looking at. And, it was interesting when we did feel like this is what God was calling us to. We interviewed with some agencies, and most of them said, you cannot do this type of ministry, member care, with your children. We just don't see that you can do it. And so they all kind of shut us down. But honestly, our kids have proved to be a vital role of that. When we come alongside missionaries in the field, they have kids a lot of times. And so our kids immediately jump in. And some of their best friends now are missionaries that we've met on the field over the years.
That's cool. Hey, for instance, what if you, what would, how can I say this? Let's say your kids would have said, no way, Jose, I'm not into missionary stuff. I just want to stay in whatever part of the US that is. What if you, then what?
Then what? Whoa. That didn't happen with us. So that is kind of a challenging thought. So when we did leave San Diego to sail south, our oldest was 14, and she was not fully on board with the idea, and did struggle for that first little bit. And we pretty much just asked her, like, will you give this a try? And our younger ones were like, sure, this sounds fun, let's do it. And they were great, but the oldest did struggle. And that first 6 months or so after we left the United States was really hard for her. She was old enough that she had friends and a peer group, was involved in youth group with the church. And so it was hard for her to leave. But then once we got out there, she found ways to stay in touch with those friends through email and occasional phone calls and video calls. And then she, I'd say it took about 6 months before she really felt like she was good with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet that's a tough one. Let's be honest. If God calls you to go to A, B, or C,
right?
Yeah, praise God for that. But for kids, the change might be huge.
Yes.
And for them to deal with all those changes, man, I can't imagine. For us as adults, it's already tough to leave friends, family.
Right.
But for kids, especially at that age.
And that sense of belonging is so important to them. And you take them out of the country they've grown up in and to another country and all new people, and just that even then once you spend time, for everyone who's been overseas for a certain amount of time, they realize you go back to your passport country and it's not the same. You're not the same, and so you don't feel that you belong anymore. And so that struggle for kids of I don't feel like I fit in anywhere. And so trying to help them find that sense of belonging, find the places that they fit in, find things that they may have in common with others. And, so we talk a lot about identity with third culture kids, and, what does that look like, and how do we help them find their identity? It's definitely one of the challenges for sure.
Yeah, we had a podcast a couple of months ago. That was on the topic, you'll never get back home again.
Yes.
Although you do get back home to your home country, in between air quotes. It's
yes.
not your home country anymore.
No.
You've changed.
Absolutely.
If you've been gone long enough, your country has changed as well. So good luck with getting back home.
Right.
And I'm actually looking forward to go to heaven, and then I'll finally be back home again.
Yes, we've talked a lot about that too, where we finally will feel at home.
Yeah, and that's a tough one. Yeah, it's definitely a tough one. Hey, but let's rewind a little bit. You are working. What's the name of your organization that you're working with?
So we work with Enkurios International. So Enkurios is a Greek word. Well, it's a combination of two Greek words. So Ankura for anchor, and Kyrios for Lord. So anchored in the Lord. Fitting that we live on a sailboat. And but we talk, from Hebrews 6:19, we have this anchor in Jesus, firm and secure. And so remembering that Jesus is what is our anchor. And that's one of the things when we talk with missionaries. We all know anyone who's involved in ministry can get very busy just doing work. There's so much to be done, and a lot of times we feel that we can't do it all, and we can't. And I think that's something that we try to remember. But we can get busy doing this good work, but almost forget why we're there doing it. And so just trying to, help missionaries remember, Jesus is your anchor, and, we hold tight to that, and everything else around us will fall into place.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. Oh, that's cool. Thank you for that. Hey, talking about busy, how do you ensure that your kids feel that they are a priority amidst all the demands of ministry?
Yes, exactly. And I think that's something that a lot of missionaries struggle with. And I've always firmly believed that our family is our first ministry, and that we need to take care of them first and foremost. And so I've always homeschooled our kids. That just kind of fell in with our military lifestyle and moving a lot. And so I was a teacher in my previous life before children. So I guess I still teach. I just don't get paid for it anymore. But the kids have helped me maintain that they are my priority. But I've also found that the kids can be such a great bridge within communities, and moving to another country, and so a family with a young child might meet another mom at a park with a young child, and that your children can connect you and open up ministry. And so, but I think keeping the kids as that priority, helping them know that they are your focus, and they will come before any other ministry, is so vital. There were some statistics a few years ago on missionary kids, teenagers, as they grew up, and as young adults, a lot of them walked away from their faith. And one of the main reasons given was, well, you know what, ministry was more important to my parents than I was, and I don't want to be a part of that. And that's hard to hear.
That's a tough one.
And so just I think keeping the kids, and like we've talked about, they have a role too, and they can be that connecting point with another family in your host country. They don't have to be seen as extra baggage that are just dragging along to the mission field. They are not at all. They're the priority. They're the first ministry.
Yeah, what we very often say to fellow missionaries, God must be your number one. Let's be very clear about that in neon letters, capital.
Yes.
He must be your number one. You yourself has to be 2A. Your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit, so you might as well take care of that.
That's true.
And don't ruin it. Your partner must be number 2B. As the Bible says, the two shall become one flesh.
Right.
So in the end, the both of you are equal at number 2. And your kids should be number 3. They're a heritage from the Lord, as Psalm 127 says.
Yes.
So you better take care of your kids. And then at number 4 is your family, your parents. Honor your father, your mother. And then there's a whole lot of nothing. And then after this whole lot of nothing, there might be mission work. And we sometimes see that this order does not sadly, some missionaries put missions before their kids,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes even before their partner, or even
Right.
before themselves. So they burn down.
Mm-hmm.
And what we very often say is, hey, I mean, it's great that you evangelize, do stuff like that, plant churches, whatsoever. It's great. But God forbid that you show up into heaven and everybody is there who you talk with about God. And you brought a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people to Christ, but your kids ain't there.
Right.
Then what are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
So please, yeah, let's keep that order very, very firm, very
Yes.
straight. Um, yeah, your kids should be number three. And then there's a whole lot of nothing. Uh, but, well, in the retreats that we organize in Poland and in Germany, we see a lot of trouble when that order is not taken care of.
Right.
And that's scary stuff.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah, that's scary stuff. And we see it way too often, to be honest. But,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. But maybe we're in the, well, if you run retreats, we're not in the line of work where you hear a lot of success stories, a lot of people who
That's
come to our
true. That's true.
retreats.
You're getting the ones that are struggling,
Yeah.
and so you're not seeing the successes.
Yeah, so that's
That
so
makes
maybe
sense.
my vision doesn't.
Right.
I hope what we see is not what's happening globally.
Yes.
We see a lot of trouble with that. Yeah, sad.
There's a lot more information coming out on third culture kids, and how to help them thrive instead of the struggles that they face it, and so I think that's positive. We're
Yeah,
seeing
definitely.
this shift over the last few years, and so yeah, I think that's a positive change.
Yeah. Hey, what have been some of the hardest parts of missionary life for your kids? And how
Let's
did you
see.
help them?
Yes, hardest parts. So I think, as I mentioned, leaving friends was a struggle for them, and then just trying to help them find ways to stay connected. Um, you know, emails and making time for phone calls or even video calls when we could, and just giving them that option to stay connected. I think some of the other things are missed experiences. Things that they, maybe the younger ones of ours. So we have 5 kids. Our oldest now is 22. Our youngest two are twins, and they're 15. So when we left to go to Mexico the first time, the youngest ones were, I think they had just turned 7, and the oldest one was 14. And so that range in there was hard. And so the younger ones were seeing things that the oldest had gotten to do, and then they're thinking, oh, well, while we're going to be in Mexico, we're not going to get to do all these things that she did. So that was kind of a struggle. And I think maybe the way we helped them through that was just looking at, well, you get these experiences that, she didn't get the opportunity to do this when she was your age. Look what you're getting to do. And so looking at trying to help them maybe shift their perspective a little bit, instead of like what they're missing, looking at what they're going to be getting. Um, and we tried a lot when they were even younger, when we were still in the States, to focus on experiences versus things. And so that materialism, they were already okay with that part of it. I think a lot of kids maybe struggle, especially if they move to a very remote location, in what they're giving up or what's not available to them. And so for us, I mean, I think that was the way maybe we prepared them a little bit, but we didn't know we were preparing them. That was God preparing them, so that materialism wasn't a struggle for them. And then I think another big one was transitions, just the back and forth. We left the United States, we went to Mexico. We were, in Mexico, but, at least once a year we come back to the States. And at first we only came back for a few months. It was after COVID that we started coming back for more extended periods of time. just those transitions back and forth. And they've talked about, like, it feels like we lead two lives. We have a life, when we're on the sailboat in Mexico, and then we have a life when we come back to Texas. And it's, people don't understand. They don't see them for who, like, their whole self. They feel like it's hard to show, in Texas, they're and not that they're hiding anything, but it's just people in Texas wouldn't understand, and people in Mexico wouldn't understand the Texas side. So, it's that's a struggle. It's just those transitions, those back and forths. And I think a lot of it is just, communication. We talk a lot with our kids, and, now that they're teenagers, it's a lot more in-depth conversations, but just, sharing how we feel, even as their parents, and not trying to sugarcoat everything, but just saying, yes, this is hard. And, what can we do as a family that might make this easier? So that I think maybe the transition piece is the hardest for us.
I like the not sugarcoating part.
Right.
What we see happening a lot, sadly, I have to say, is that some parents are into, we should be happy that we've got this life, but the Lord is going to bless us. We should enjoy it. Everything will be okay with God.
Right.
But let's be honest, in Genesis 3, it says what the consequences are of eating the darn apple. Well, we all ate the apple, so here we are. Thorns and thistles it is, and it hurts sometimes.
So definitely.
So let's at least be honest and say, hey, come on, it's the mission field. It's not a campsite. It's not a holiday. It's not a hobby.
Right.
It's the mission field, and sometimes it's tough. And I guess go.
And so I was gonna say, and Satan's pushing back. Like, he wants it to be hard, because if it's hard, maybe we'll give up, go back to our passport country, and and that's not the answer. I mean, but recognizing that it is hard. Yes, there are good things, but there are hard things, and that walking through those hard things, and the grief that sometimes comes from all those, and just being able to talk through that with our kids, help them process through that, so that they can be healthy and thriving. And that walking through these hard things with our kids is what helps them build resiliency. Kids aren't resilient just because, like, they aren't born that way. We have to help them walk through and go through these steps together to build that resiliency, so that then the next hard thing that comes, they're able to walk through that. And so it's definitely a process.
Yeah, the conversations with your kids, I bet 99% goes, the conversation is just there. But do you also plan time? Do you schedule time with your kids? Hey, Monday we're going to talk about topic A, B, or C, or how does that work? I don't have a clue.
We do have scheduled time. Yearly we try to do walk ourselves through an annual debriefing, where we talk about kind of the highs and lows of the year, and process some of those things. And it might be better if we had somebody else walk us through it rather than just us as parents. But it's definitely there's that scheduled time at least once a year where we're doing these. But I mean, even weekly, we'll kind of talk through, like, okay, what does the week look like, and what the kids are really good. We're definitely very close as a family, and I think that's something that can happen on the mission field, but it's not a given. Some families really will separate on the mission field. They don't feel that connection. The kids will isolate themselves. Parents are busy. Kids kind of do their own thing. And so it's not, I want to say that, being on the mission field means your family's close, but it doesn't mean that. It's something that you really have to work for And our kids, I feel that we're very blessed that our family is very close. Our kids are very close with each other. They're each other's best friends. And so we have a very open dialogue that continues. And so that's, but I do think that there's a time and a place for those specific, hey, we need to sit down and we need to talk through what this is going to look like. And even when we're making decisions on, okay, when we're headed back to the United States, or okay, it's time to head back to Mexico, and like as we plan through different times, it's always one of those family meetings as we make those plans, and we take into account everything that the kids say. We do maintain that Dennis and I have 51% of the vote, and so we really listen to theirs. And if all 5 kids are against something or they don't feel it's right, we really listen to that. But I mean, there have been a handful of times that we've kind of overridden and said, we really think this is the right time, and we're going to do it now. But yeah, maybe only once or twice that's actually happened, that we use that 51% vote.
Yeah, but it's good though. I mean, you're the parents, so
yes,
you might as well lead the family.
That's right. That's right.
A good one. Yeah. Hey, and the other thing I was thinking about is, God calls you to go to country A or B. And in our case, between the calling and the day that we went was at least a year. So we as a couple had a lot of preparation.
Yes.
What sort of preparation would you say would be good to give missionary kids before you go?
Right. I think, again, for us with the military, I think that gave us some preparation that we just weren't even planning on. And so when we told our kids, okay, we're gonna head to Mexico, we're gonna move, they were used to it. We moved all the time, and so that was not as much of a struggle, I think, as it would be for someone who maybe had lived their whole life in one place. But that year you mentioned, I think for some kids that would be super beneficial to have this long extended, like, I can prepare for this, I can mentally and physically prepare and emotionally. But then maybe for other kids that might be almost harder because it's just long and drawn out, and let's just get on with it, let's just move. But I think that time of talking about it, discussing it as a family, going through the family calling, like, what does this look like overseas? What is it going to look like? I think for kids, the opportunity to maybe visit that place before you actually move there could be great. Just it gives them a vision of what life could look like. And, maybe go over as a tourist and get to know that country and the good things about it. I think a lot of families, if they just show up somewhere and they've never been, and they get right to work, and the kids there's no passion for them in this country. And so taking that time as a family to maybe be tourist and get to know some of the unique aspects, I think that could be really beneficial to helping kids adjust and, just be able to adapt a little more easily.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we see missionaries going to the mission field in a totally different culture that they've never been to.
Right.
Never, ever. And we're like, why didn't you go there for a holiday?
Yes.
I mean, enjoy. Yeah, I mean, see what the culture really is like. Not what the interweb says the culture is like, but
Yes.
experience it yourself. And if possible, go there, and not just for a week. Go there for a couple of weeks, couple of months. See what
Right.
it's like. And yes, it will be different as soon as you have to live there.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole different ballgame. But at least go there
Yes.
and fall in love, I guess, with the country.
Mm-hmm.
But also experience the, not so positive sides of a country.
Right. Because
That's
every
fun.
country has them.
Oh, yes, they do. Don't think that there's one country with only rainbows and unicorns.
Right.
No, they all have their challenges, to say the
Yes.
least. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But that's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, especially for kids. Never thought about it. Yeah, never thought about it like that. Yeah, did your kids do some sort of language study before you went, or how did that go?
So language study, yes. I think that, I mean, that would definitely be an important part of preparation too, just so that they can communicate when they get there. For our kids, they were already kind of doing a little bit of Spanish. Just a lot of it was like Duolingo, the app, and they enjoy that, and they were doing that. We had some friends who were in Mexico, just across the border. Our last duty station with the Navy was San Diego, California, and so we were right there at the Mexican border. And so we went down for 2 weeks and spent time with friends that were missionaries just in Ensenada, and joined them in what they were doing, and went to all these different places. She worked with some orphanages and migrant farmers, and so we just tagged along with them, and it was great how our kids, like, they took a soccer ball, a football, in Mexico. It's called a football, and so they just were, would go up to the kids and in their very simple Spanish ask, "Do you want to play?" and just jumped into games with the kids. And so they did do a little bit of Spanish before that, and then really jumped into it once we made the decision that we were headed to Mexico. And yeah, our kids are really good. We are not so great at Spanish, but we kind of laugh because when we go down there and we're working with missionaries that are there, the missionaries are excited to speak English. And
Okay.
so we speak a lot of English with them, and but we are living there, so we do have, at least have to have a little bit of Spanish. We got to make her, be able to make it. So that's kind of funny. But the kids are great, and so there are a lot of times we'll lean over, especially the younger two. Because they started much earlier, and their Spanish is pretty great, and we'll just be like, "Hey, how do you say?"
Yeah, yeah. I'm very often jealous of kids. I mean, they look into a book, into a school book, and they just know. They,
Yes,
they experience another language, and within a couple of months, they're fine.
right.
And I'm still like, I don't have a clue what they're saying here.
Yeah, we're still speaking at like a 4-year-old level.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
definitely. Yeah, and kids are so much faster. I mean,
they
man,
are.
I'm very often jealous of kids. They're way more flexible than I am.
Yes.
That, well, it does say something about me, but it also says something about the age. I mean, my storage capacity in my head is not as flexible as it was.
No.
And with kids, they're like, yeah, they get along fine. They make friends
Right.
at school pretty fast.
Mm-hmm. They're
And I'm
pretty
like,
quick.
friends? that took me a year.
That's so true. Yeah. Which is why, like I think I mentioned earlier, like our kids can be that connecting point. They meet somebody on the playground and they're best friends, and then we go over and introduce ourselves to their parents, and you know,
Yeah,
they are our bridge.
they definitely can be. Yeah. Hey, your kids. How do you encourage your kids to see their involvement in missions as an opportunity for their own faith? Just not as just an extension of your calling, but as an opportunity for their own faith development. How do you
So
encourage them to do that?
I'll be honest, I didn't actually encourage a whole lot. I think they would see, us, just living out our faith, um, and what that looks like, and they, and they're doing the same thing. And in fact, so years ago, I guess it was just before COVID, um, they they were just hanging out with some other kids. The boating community is actually a whole lot larger than most people would think.
Okay.
And so we were in this location in Mexico that it's kind of a hub for sailors. And they had a group of kids, and one of the ladies there at the marina would do kids activities, and just she was always trying to get the kids involved and meet each other. And so our kids are doing that, and then they felt like they wanted to do. We were doing Sunday church services, and their kids were like, well, we want to do one too. And so they started a little Bible study with some of the kids. And this was mostly brought on by our oldest son. He's now 20, so he would have been 16 at the time. And he's just kind of always been that natural born leader. And so he started doing Bible studies, and they would have kids come and they'd meet at the beach. And that just kind of grew into, they started calling it Lighthouse. And then once COVID hit, that meant, there wasn't this in person, they weren't really getting together anymore. But even in that, like, some boats are sailing away to new places. And so then the original group got split up. So they started doing short videos and emailing them to everyone. And so and then COVID just forced it all online. And so they have a group that they email. I won't say regularly, off and on from time to time. It was pretty regular at first, and then it's, kind of changed a little. We're trying to kind of get that going again. But they just started to see, like, what can we do? And through that group, they've added all the missionary kids we've ever met that are on it. And so it's I don't know, around the world, missionary kids are part of this Lighthouse group that our kids started. And so, they'll come to us and they're like, hey, this is the Bible study we want to do, or and they ask a lot of questions and, get that feedback, 'cause, especially for my husband. And so that was all on them. And that wasn't really us encouraging it, other than them just seeing, what a lifestyle, living your faith is. And, and again, it's just, it's definitely another way God blessed us with these amazing kids.
Yeah, well, that's another thing. I mean, this whole COVID thing, I don't see it as a great blessing. But on the other hand, it made us more creative, I guess.
Yes.
Let's put everything online.
And that it opened up things. So, like I mentioned, our oldest that was struggling, she didn't have that youth group connection. Well, once COVID hit, they started doing youth group online, and she got to be a part of that again. And so, there were some good things that came out of COVID.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. Sometimes I even miss it. It's like we were forced to be more creative than we were before. And a lot of stuff that was kept in a church or in a closed meeting or in a meeting room is now out in the open. It's on YouTube. It's on internet. A lot of Bible studies went online.
Yes.
And they are still online. So if Jesus comes back tomorrow, all this stuff is still online for everybody who's
That's true.
Jesus. And they can still learn through all that stuff that went online. And before that, a lot of, it was an old school pen and paper.
Yes.
And now it's in the open. So yeah, sometimes I do miss the COVID time, but I hope it's not coming back.
Right. Yeah, we don't really want the COVID part again, but
No,
the benefits, that silver lining.
Definitely.
I think was good.
Hey, another question I've got is you've got your home church, your sending church, I guess, something like that. What would be a top tip for them to support your kids?
Yes. So that's one thing that we really we actually strive to focus on, with churches when we're back in the United States, and we want to, help churches to see, like, these are ways that you can really help missionaries with kids out there. I think biggest one, like, recognize the kids, recognize that they are a part of that family calling. A lot of places, the kids are just, sit in the back or take them to another room and do a VBS with them, which I feel like that's the last thing missionary kids need is another VBS.
Thank you.
Right. So, that focused, intentional, like, our third culture kids are unique and they need that unique care. And so do something that's meaningful for them. And and reach out to the parents, offer the parents some, resources. Like some of these parents, it's already hard enough to be a parent, much less you throw them into another country, another culture, another language, and they're trying to be a parent. And I think also the struggle with, missions work, we all feel that, we're raising support, we're raising that financial support, and, those who are giving expect to see results. And so we're caught in this, in between, a rock and a hard place, I guess, that, we feel that we have to do all this stuff to prove our worth. And that's hard, and then as we talked about earlier, just maintaining our family and that they come before the ministry work. Yeah. And so having churches that are there to support the parents with, whatever resources they might need as parents, take an interest in the kids. There's studies that show having two adults two adults that will take interest, not parents, that are interested and supportive of your kids is huge for their healthy emotional state. And so, you can have these, parents, grandparents, honorary grandparents at a church that, reach out and contact these kids on the mission field. Our youth group could send letters to the kids and, emails, stay in touch, kind of almost a pen pal idea. And, and ask those good questions like, tell me about your host culture. And, what is it you do there? Do you play sports there? And, open up the conversation. And, that's beneficial on both sides, the sending church as well as for the kids and the missionary families. We have a pastor's wife that when we first left to go to the mission field, she said, she handed us some cash and she said, this is ice cream money for your kids. That's all this is for, just ice cream money. And she has for the last 8 years consistently sent us money, and it's always labeled ice cream money. And the kids know, like, that is her way of like recognizing the children and that they are valuable and important and they need something fun from time to time. And so anytime we go and get ice cream, we take a picture and we send it to her. And we've had some really unique ice cream places. This one place, they made their cones like fresh there, but they were in the shape of a fish. And it was so fun. And so we had to send up close pictures of these fish shaped ice cream cones to her that time. But, just, anything. And it's simple. It's not a big deal. She sends us ice cream money, but it is such a big deal to them. Yes. And I think one other way that I'll push for is that families, we tend to not, take vacations, go on holiday because, we feel like we should still be, doing the ministry. But, that is another thing that, just proves that, prove to your kids how valuable they are and that you want to be with them and spend time with them. And, so maybe a vacation fund, a church could say, here is money that is just for you to go on a holiday, don't use it for ministry. Don't use it to, buy groceries. You need to take your family on a holiday.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Not only for kids. What we see very often is that people are willing to, well, if they are willing to give money at all, they very often are willing to give money for the mission. But as soon as the missionary says, hey, I'm going on holiday. We had a missionary a couple of weeks. We had a missionary over. And she once said, hey, I'm going on a holiday for 2 weeks. And a lot of her, some of her sponsors dropped out and they said, well, why do you need a holiday?
Wow.
You're a missionary. It's a holiday anyway.
Oh, my goodness. They are so wrong. So wrong.
What? Everybody, well, at least in the country that we're from, everybody's entitled to have 20 days off per year. Why shouldn't a missionary not have 20 days? Jesus, there are stories in the Bible. Jesus went away and took some rest.
Yes.
He had time off with the disciples. They had family. They had friends.
Absolutely.
And now all of a sudden we say, hey, well, you're missionaries. Don't you dare to get an ice cream. or we'll cut you off.
Right. You're wasting money, you know.
I mean,
That struggle of why should we be no less? Um, and yes, I know in the United States people get, some places get 30 days of, paid time off a year. Like why wouldn't missionaries get the same thing? They are working in such, challenging. I read something, I wish I could remember the statistic about how much more, brain power it takes to do things in another culture, in another language, in another, currency, just even going to the grocery store and, okay, what is it I want to buy? Now I've got to translate. I've got to figure out the money in my head, and, just how much harder that is, and you come home from the grocery store exhausted,
and you're
and
done.
you're like,
Yeah.
why is that so hard? But it is, it's just so challenging. But I think the other side is a lot of people look at it as, missionaries when they come back to their passport country for furlough, home assignment. People look at that as a vacation,
No, it's not.
and it is not.
No.
I mean, we've said, like, it's a second job. I mean, especially if you're coming back to visit supporters or try to raise more financial support, that's a job in and of itself. And you're not home. You're not with your own things. You're traveling a lot. You're sleeping on couches. And it's either you spend the money to stay at hotels or you stay with people. But even that can be exhausting because you stay up late visiting and you're not eating, you're eating food that I'm sure they're providing great food, but maybe it's not the healthiest food. And, after doing that for a couple of months, like that starts to take a toll. And so, but I think a lot of times people look at that as a vacation, and
No, it's
no,
not.
that's
No.
job number 2 at least, if not job number 10.
Yeah, we just got back from a trip to our home country, and we were totally done when we got back.
Yes.
And then we got back into the mission field, and we were already totally done. And now your work starts again. And
Yes.
that's not sustainable.
It's not.
So I would have. What we do is, as soon as we go back to our home country for whatever reason, as soon as we're back into our mission country, we first take 1 week off, and then we start with work.
Yes. Yes. I think that's very wise.
Otherwise, it's just not sustainable. And but as you said, it's hard for people back home, in between air quotes, to understand what missionary life is, and it's hard for us to understand how life for them is. It's
Yes.
It's a totally different planet sometimes.
Right.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Definitely.
Yeah, so that does remind me I should plan another holiday. That'll have to wait until the next year, I'm afraid. But we'll see.
Oh, yes.
We'll see how that goes. Hey, do you have any other tips and tricks for the people back home?
Tips and tricks. Let's see. I think a lot of this we hit on, some of the things that kids need that just will help them thrive on the mission field. They need to be heard. They need to know that their family is there to support them and that they believe them and believe in them. And they need to feel that they have that role, that they are a part of it and not just being drug along. I think another thing maybe that's hard for us to provide for our kids is that feeling of safety, in the midst of transition and the, moving about and some of the challenging places that missionaries live, that it's sometimes hard for our kids to feel safe and secure. And so I think we as parents need to listen to them, and not just us telling them you're safe, it's fine. Like, they need to feel that. And so, what is it that they need to make them so that they actually feel safe? So, that's, again, back to those conversations, having that discussions with your kids. And it's, of course, harder with little ones. Little ones aren't going to be able to articulate and tell you, well, I really need this, Mommy. But you can observe. And I think that's a part of, being intentional, being involved in your kids' lives, that, not just you go overseas and you stick them in all day daycare where, you aren't keeping up with what might be happening in their lives. And so, staying close and paying attention. One other thing that I think is big for kids, a lot of times our life in the mission field is a little unknown. We can't really look forward to things, or we put things on calendar, but we put it in pencil. We say we write it in the sand at low tide because it's going to change, and sometimes that's hard because the kids want to look forward to something, and I feel like the very second we tell our kids something, then sure enough it changed, and then they are disappointed, and so a lot of parents will just stop telling them things because they don't want them to be disappointed or sad. But even just simple things like so having some traditions, things that they can look forward to. One thing that we do, as simple as it sounds, is every Friday night is family movie night and pizza. And no matter where in the world we are, we will have family movie night and pizza, if at all possible. There's maybe 2 Fridays a year that we can't do it, and then we usually do it on Saturday or something. But that's something that our kids really look forward to, and even now we have 2 kids away in college, and they still will have movie and pizza on Friday nights, and if at all possible, we sometimes even watch the same movie so that we just have that connection. So we have our oldest is in college in Texas, our next one is in college in Missouri, and so we just to maintain that family connectedness. And I'm sure that's something that they'll probably carry over into their kids' lives. But just having those simple things that, easy traditions that your kids can look forward to something. I think that's kind of a big deal. So
That's a good one, actually. As a couple, we do the same. We block days or parts of the day. Those are for us. No matter what happens, it's for us. And if somebody shows up and says, "Hey, do you've got time tomorrow?" We say, "Well, we don't. There's already something on our calendar."
yes.
We don't tell them what's on our calendar. I mean,
Right.
that's up to us. But no, sorry, our calendar is already filled. And it could be that the calendar says we're going to a movie together, or we've got a pizza moment together.
Yes.
And no matter what happens, no matter who knocks on our door, we're not there. Sorry for you.
And that communicates that value and worth to our spouse or to our kids.
I mean, just as I said, I mean, God must be your number one, and then you or your partner, and then your kids, and then a whole lot of nothing. And the mission field is very, well, how should I say it politely? Well, sometimes it's chaotic.
Yes.
Things do change a lot, but the connection between me and God, the connection between me and my wife, or if we were have kids, me and my kids, they should be high on the list.
Right.
And very often, the chaos from this world just shows up at our doorstep, and everything goes out of the window. And we're like, no. And of course, we made the mistake that we let the chaos win.
Right.
But after a couple of times, you learn, well, no, this time is reserved for me and spouse, kids, whatever. And you need to do that. You need to think about that. I love the pizza and movies.
Like I said, it's simple, but it's definitely made profound impacts on our family over the years.
And now I'm getting hungry and I'm in for pizza. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you for that. Well, and that's I guess that's the end of our podcast. Brandy, thank you very much for being online today with us.
Yes, thank you so much.
It was a blessing to learn from you. I mean, it reminds me of a Bible verse. Let me get the Bible verse. Once again, it's such a chaos on my thing. Let me get my Bible out. 2 Corinthians 1, verse 3 and 4. Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God.
Yes.
You've learned a lot on the mission field with your kids. I bet it wasn't all easy sailing, literally.
That is so true.
But it was a blessing to have you online so that other people can learn from your sailing experience, so to say.
Yes. Thank you. And we do have more resources on our website. And so if anyone, wants to look at those or get in touch with us, I'd be happy to talk more.
We'll put the website in the description for everybody who wants to know more. Please do visit them. And with that, we come to the end of our podcast. So thank you very much all for listening. Please do like, subscribe, follow, or whatever, and hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. If you have any questions or would like to learn more about our work, please visit emmy.foundation. And remember the last words Jesus gave to you all, as we can read in Matthew 28 verse 20b, and surely I am with you always, to the very end of the age. No matter what happens, no matter how good or bad your days go, Jesus is with you. You can trust his promise, no matter what.